Hello there. My name is Charmz and welcome to AngielskaUlica. Today, we're going to discuss about modals. Modal verbs like has to, have to, must, and their negative forms.
Modal verbs has to, have to, must, and their negative forms. Let's start with must. It is a real modal verb, and therefore, like all modal verbs, it is always followed by the infinitive without to. Example, must do. It's the same for all pronouns. Examples, I must, he must, it must, etc. Also, it does not need auxiliaries. It takes direct negative and question forms. Example, we must not or mustn't. Must we? Finally, it never combines with another modal verb. Examples, you can't say he will must. You'll have to say he will have to. Now let's talk about have to. Have to is a semi-modal verb. It is like a modal verb because it fulfills a specific function, but it behaves like an ordinary verb in its formulation. It is followed by the infinitive without to. Example, have to do. But it is conjugated according to pronouns, like I have to, he has to, etc. Unlike must, it needs auxiliaries. It doesn't take direct negative and question forms. Examples, I don't have to, she doesn't have to. Do I have to? Does she have to? Finally, it can combine with modal verbs. Examples, you will have to, he might have to. Now let's take a look at usage, starting with must. The first usage is expressing a necessity felt by the speaker. We use must for the present and future tenses. Examples, he is very ill. You must call a doctor now. We must not or mustn't lose the match tomorrow, or we will be out of a tournament. This is the best book I've ever read. You must read it too. You mustn't hesitate to call me if you need help. Looking at the second usage of must, it is expressing a prohibition. Once again, in the present and future tenses. Examples, you must not or mustn't use your mobile devices during takeoff. Another example, you must not be late for your interview tomorrow. And the third usage of must is an assumption, expressing an assumption in the present or past, in affirmative sentences only. Examples, you must be tired after your very long day. He must have read my letter because he repeated exactly what I had written. Okay, let's take a look at have to. Have to expresses an external obligation and positive sentences. Examples, you have to make an appointment to see him. She has failed her exam. She has to retake it. The second usage is expressing a necessity or obligation in the past. Examples, he was very ill. We had to call the doctor immediately. He was very busy. I had to make an appointment to see him. And finally, have to removes a necessity or an obligation in all the tenses present, past, and future. Examples, he feels much better now. You don't have to call a doctor. I didn't have to make an appointment to see him. She has passed her exam. She won't have to retake it. Please note, as you can see, the main difference between must and have to is that must is a necessity felt by the speaker, whereas have to is an external obligation or rule. If this difference is not relevant, you can use must and have to interchangeably in positive sentences. However, be careful that in the negative must not is still a necessity or an obligation not to do something, a prohibition, whereas don't have to removes the necessity or obligation. As must has no past tense, both obligation and necessity are expressed with had to in the past. To further explain, the modal verbs of obligation, must versus has or have to. Must and have to are both used to express positive obligation. For example, you must do your homework. Here, must can be replaced with have to. He or she has to go to the doctor. Again, has to can be replaced with must. The negative form of have to is do not have to, does not have to, and this is used to show that something is not an obligation. For example, you don't have to go to the party. He doesn't have to accept the job. Must not is used to show a negative obligation. For example, you must not smoke in the house. Remember, must and have to have the same meaning in positive sentences, but a different meaning in negative sentences. Let us look at an example. The teacher says to his students, "You must do your homework." You must listen to the teacher. Here the word must can be replaced with have to, because we're using this to show positive obligation. Now, the teacher says, "You must not eat during class, chew gum, or talk on the phone." Here she uses must not to show negative obligation. Here's another example. It is Saturday. I don't have to work today. Here we use don't have to show that it is not an obligation. In our last example, you must eat all your vegetables. You don't have to finish your chicken. Here, must is used to show obligation, and don't have to is used to show that it's not an obligation.
So there you have it. I hope you're able to learn something from the brief discussion on modal verbs has to, have to, must, and their negative forms. For more info, more discussions about this, come and visit our website, AngielskaUlica.pl, and enroll in my class. Looking forward to meet you. Bye now.